Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Inner. Today I have with me Baaba Heru. Hi, Baba.
Hey there, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. If you
Doing some
could
great.
introduce yourself to the viewers.
Yes, they call me Baaba Heru. I'm an elder now, so they put the Baaba on me. It means spirit of spirits. And I've been teaching the divine legacy of the Happy Nile Valley for over 50 years now. And I established the first shrine here in America, in New York City specifically, dedicated to the reconstitution of Ma'atian consciousness. Ma'at is a sacred spiritual order of our ancient Nile Valley ancestors, mislabeled Egyptian today. And Ma'at is the sacred order of the universe. Ma'at is our in-breathing and out-breathing. Everything in that order's balance is in Ma'at. Ma'at is harmony, reciprocity, sobriety, propriety. Ma'at is law. All of these, Ma'at is the right measure and the right weight. Ma'at is honesty. All of these principles is what constituted the ancient culture of our Nile Valley African ancestors. Now, for a long time, due to the very crazy movies they've been making in Hollywood, and due to a lot of defamation of ancient Nile Valley culture, things like that they worshipped many gods, that they were polytheists who needed monotheism to come and teach them what they already knew, and all of these lies that have been spread by the Egyptologists about this ancient African culture. As a matter of fact, they have tried to move this sacred culture out of the continent and put it in a nebulous place called the Middle East. You know, they are in denial that the greatness that they have encountered there, the art, the coffins of gold and the masks of gold and all of these, and the pyramids, that all of these were built by people who came in flying saucers. No, these Africans could never have built anything like that. But as time moved on, many of the Egyptologists have had to back up from those lies and are now racing over each other to tell the truth of the greatness of this culture. Now, the fact is that many of our sisters and brothers, because they like movies, they have adopted a lot of these silly movies from Hollywood and that have told many untruths about the Nile Valley ancestors. But these were African people, and later on, as they were invaded by Assyrians in 663, by Persians in 525 BCE, by Greeks in 332 BCE, by Romans in 32 BCE, and then later by Arabs in 640 AD, these subsequent rapists of this ancient culture debased it. And of course, they took the gold and they melted it down and they sold it on the black markets of Europe. Until there was a man by the name of a Frenchman by the name of Mariette, who inspired the Khedive, who was the ruler of Egypt at that time, to build a museum so that they could collect money in perpetuity. They call it bakshish, all right? And so they have done exactly that. And so now they're building museums wherever they find a tomb, they build a museum there because when the tourists come, it gives them another place to stop and gawk at the wonders created by the hands of African royalty. So my work has been to invite brothers and sisters and invite the whole world, whoever has an interest. I don't care what race they are, but I'm specifically focused on people of African ascent because we have been the one that have been most fooled about this culture. You see, I remember that Kanye said that slavery was a choice, and I disagreed with him that chattel slavery was never our choice. However, our continued grasp of the patriarchal belief systems foisted upon us by slave masters of the East and the West. And people need to remember that the Eastern slave trade was going on for 1,500 years or more before the Europeans, the Portuguese, got involved in the European slave trade. And of course, the Eastern people, they call themselves Arabs, are still at it to this day. When Gaddafi was murdered, they went around rounding up as many dark-skinned Africans as they could find, and they sold them as slaves again. All right. And when we start talking about reparations, we never mention the Eastern slave trade. We always just deal with the European slave trade. And the fact is that the Eastern slave traders have never created even one abolitionist. Yet, the Westerners who indulged in the chattel enslavement trade, they grew quite a few abolitionists who labored against this chattel slavery, and finally they succeeded. That caused Abraham Lincoln to say that he's going to emancipate them. But of course, there was a catch to it. They created a 13th Amendment to still continue their enslavement of poor people, where they are ensconced in prisons and penitentiaries to do work for 5 cents a minute, 5 cents an hour for these corporations. So that is exactly some of what I try to share. But more importantly, I try to share our need to reclaim this culture of Ma'at, because we need it more now than ever before. Because as you can see here in America, there is an attitude of lies being told, and now more than ever before, we need to have truth, which is Ma'at. And I'm calling on my brothers and sisters in all the various faiths, in Hebrew Israelite faith, in the Christian faith, in the Islamic faith, to investigate the character of these Nile Valley Africans, how they spared the life of all these major prophets, how Abraham and Sarah came in to the Nile Valley starving, and our ancestors fed them. And when they came in, they were greeted by people carrying this sign. This is a word in the ancient Metuneter, now called hieroglyphics, for life eternal. This honors the Divine Mother, because African culture never negates the presence of the Divine Mother. These are the children, and this is the male, you see? So again, this is a symbol of the Trinity of what it takes to bring life into the world and the continuation of life. So this is a symbol that I've carried for over 50 years now, and I've been sharing this with many sisters and brothers. I've been teaching a course called Chemetics 101, which exposes them to the entry level of this ancient culture. And many young people have, and elders likewise, have claimed this culture and are now living according to this ancient Ma'atian template. One of the first things that we do, we invite our beloved brothers and sisters to stop eating what they call all of this soul food. I call it SOLE food. It should be trampled underfoot. It should not enter into your body, because look at what's happening to us. The obesity is rampant among us and among Americans in general, because they're eating a lot of denatured foods. And look what happened with the COVID when it came. Who were the first to die? The most obese people. And our churches are filled with obese people. How can you worship a Savior that is so skinny? All the icons of Yeshua, now miscalled Jesus in the Roman vernacular, you see him as skinny as a rail. His ribs are showing. Yet we go downstairs in the church and fill our bellies with macaroni and cheese and chitterlings and a whole bunch of hog maws and all this terrible type of stuff. And let's not forget the cakes. We have some of our ministers with pounds of fat back behind their necks. It does not encourage the obese flock to try to eat more healthy foods, you see. So part of what we do in reclaiming Ma'at is we try to bring Ma'at into our body temple to balance our acid and alkaline ratio so that we would avoid illness, because most of the illnesses that we suffer from comes from the proliferation of acidity in our bloodstream, caused by the eating of too much starch, too much sugar, too much flesh foods. And remember, these animals that we are eating have been injected with a lot of gender-bending substances that causes confusion in young people, that they don't know whether they're male or female nowadays because they are being tricked and with this agenda to turn them from their true nature. And I tell my brothers and sisters, be careful. Do not be persecuting our beloved brothers and sisters who may be sexually confused because something has been done to them. I think it was Philip Shock Matthews said, there's nothing wrong with our people, but something happened to us. And the happening that took place has been the molestation in some of the churches, molestation in the homes, because as I said before, we've picked up many bad habits on the plantations of this country. All right. And some of that continues to proliferate in our community. So those are some of the issues that I speak about and that I teach about. I encourage our brothers and sisters to find a name in our ancient culture to invoke when we call upon deity. I use the word divine because divine, when I speak of deity, I do not use the God word because that's a German word. I'm not a German. I'm not going to address the Most High in a German word. I have to respect my ancestors and find a word in our ancient language that I can invoke, because the people who invoke the name Neter or Nker, they seem to have accomplished quite a bit. And as a musician, I play the guitar and I write songs and so on. And I had a band in the 80s. And as a musician, I listen very carefully to the sound of words. And I encourage our brothers and sisters to reclaim some of our ability to articulate some of these sounds, because it will ennoble our blood cells. Because don't forget, sound has an impact on water. If you go near water with a troublesome tone, the water will begin to get very agitated. But if you speak very soothingly, you will see the water will calm down. Okay? And since we are made of more than at least 75% of our body is pure water, you see all these loud playing gangster rap that people put on in the hood with their cars, blasting. This is affecting our lifestyle in a very profound way. So I encourage us to find ways to respect ourselves, to respect our source. And that's why I said, if these young men who are out there with their guns, especially in Chicago and places like Baltimore and other places like Philly, killing each other, but they're killing each other but wearing a Christian cross, I invite them to get an Ankh, a sign of life eternal, because if they wore an Ankh, they would not be so quick to kill each other, because they would have to be true to life process. This stands for life. And why would you continue to wear a symbol that deals with death? Huh? You see, these are the things that we have been tricked. So yes, we as a people of African ascent, have really been turned around from our true way of being. And so by reclaiming this culture, and it's the one culture for which there is primary evidence of its greatness chiseled deep in stone, because our ancestors knew that we were going to lose our way. And so we had elders such as Joseph Ben Jochannan, known as Dr. Ben, John Hendrik Clark, Ivan van Sertima, and so many, Sheikh Anta Diop, who wrote the book African Origins of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Okay, and he said in that book, it's somewhere in the preface, he said that the oneness of Egyptian and Black culture could not be stated more clearly because of this essential identity of genius and race. Today, all Negroes, that's what he called them, can trace their culture back to ancient Kemet or Egypt and build a modern society on that foundation. When I read that, I committed it to memory, because that is the work that I do. Not only was I be talking about it, I create the emblems of the culture, like I fashioned this. Look, for instance, this ring that I'm wearing. Okay, this is the Jinyame. It means the omnipotence of God. It comes from the Adinkra symbology of Ghana. All right. You see, on this way, I'm wearing the Ankh again on my finger. All right, affirming life continuously, because we are life's people, but we have been kidnapped by a death race of people who love violence. And unfortunately, many of us have adopted that behavior. We've had some teachers teaching us how to be violent, but we are not violent against anyone but ourselves. So if Black Lives Matter, then it should matter to us more than anybody else. How you expect people to respond to such a call when you're disrespecting your own life? It doesn't make sense. So if you claim my art, if you claim the Ankh, the sign of life, and wear this Ankh, and I think I've made more Ankhs than Egypt has today. As a matter of fact, a few of my designs have been stolen and are being sold on the market of the internet. That I warn those who wear my emblems, the emblems that I've designed. When you go there, they will ask you, "Oh, can I hold that so I can polish it up for you? You come back in 15 minutes or half an hour, and I will have it nice and polished for you." But guess what? They'll take it and they'll make a mold of it, a rubber mold, and copy it. And next thing you know, it'll be sold on the markets all over this world. So I invite brothers and sisters to get to know this ancient culture, get to know the symbology of the ancient ancestors, and begin to apply and practice my art. First and foremost, bring ourselves to sacred balance and order. So I've finished with that. Now, any other questions, my brother?
Yes, sir. That was great. So where did you start and how did you get to this legacy?
Well, I got to this legacy through my beloved father, and I was birthed out of a beautiful mother who nurtured me. And my father, every day after school, I would go to his tailor shop. He was a Christian minister. And he would say to me, "Son," and I couldn't quite understand all he was saying because I'm 8, 9 years old, listening to him talk about, in the Bible shows that we people of African descent are children of Ham. Oh, he said, but we are following the ways of Shem. And Shem, based upon the Bible story of the children of Noah, that Noah had 3 sons. Cam, who they call Ham now, which is an insult. It equates us with the pig. Shem, who the sheep herder from Asia Minor, and Japheth, the northerner, known as the Ta-Mahu, or people of the northern lands. We do not refer to people with derogatory terms. We prefer to refer to people by their origin, where they are from. Okay? We are not into the habit, like some people are in this country, of insulting us and calling us apes and equating us with the apes of Africa. I must remind these people who call us apes that apes have very thin lips. Okay, and when you shave them, they have a pink color. Okay, don't be fooled by the coat of black hair that covers their body. Okay, and so I would ask, who is the ape now? Look in the mirror. Anyway, to get back to your question, which is the next one that you have for me.
Yes. How'd you get to the legacy?
Well, I began to read more. And that's a thing that we do not do enough of. We are very distracted by movies, and I don't understand. We like to sip the mores of a culture that has enslaved us. You think they're going to put things on the screen that's going to free you? They want to keep you all the time bound to an attitude of inferiority. So you have to fight. Look, it was just the other day that Sidney Poitier was able to get on the what they call the silver screen. Prior to that, we were Amos and Andy, were a whole bunch of terrible images of our people, with their eyes bugging out of their heads and all of this. And so I encourage our brothers and sisters to read more. Okay? They used to say if you want to hide something from a person of African descent these days here in America, put it in a book. You see, we read and we worship the memory of Malcolm X, not realizing that when Malcolm X was in prison, he read a dictionary the way you would read a book. He turned page after page. He became a master of words. And that's the reason why when he spoke, anyone couldn't comprehend what he was saying, because he was a master of his choice of words. All right? And you can only learn if you study. We should be, look, words can enslave you, but words can also free you. So, if we would study more words, because, many of us have learned to speak this Anglish. I say Anglish because it's the language that has many angles, okay? But we have learned to speak English from the dregs that were sent over here from the jails of England. The way they sent the same dregs to Australia, where these people who were not thought too much of in their country, in England or in Ireland, where they came from, that they came over here to be overseers on the plantation. So many of us have adopted their speech patterns. One of the reasons why we have a difficulty saying ask, we say axe. An axe is something to chop a tree down with, but ask means you're asking a question. Those speech patterns are not our true nature. It's that we've listened to these dregs and we've copied their speech patterns. So I invite brothers and sisters to read more, get a book, write down words that you don't comprehend, learn polysyllables, words with many syllables, not just single syllable words, show that you have a mastery of the language that has been used to enslave you. Because if you have a mastery of this language, you can free yourself. Thank you. Thank you, son. Yes, so that was my son leaving. He's such a great young man. He assists me a lot. Yes, so that is how I began to go deep into this knowledge. I remember I was a peace officer in New York City, working in some of the most terrible neighborhoods in New York. And some of my so-called superiors did not like my style because they said I spent too much time talking to the people. And I said, well, you taught me in the academy, the police academy, that all I had to do was my first duty is to prevent crime. How can you prevent crime if you do not spend your time talking to the people who are the victims of crime and get their cooperation? I used to give them my home number. And I would be at home relaxing, and I get a phone call from somebody that said, listen, so-and-so took a car, and you will find it on such and such a street on milk crates. Well, and they would tell me where the person was who did it. I would go, knock on this person's door, open it, officer, can I help you? Yes, you can. Come with me. Where are we going, officer? Are you locking me up? No. You come with me. There are some tires that you took off a car that's parked at such and such a location. You are now going to put those tires back. I don't care where you hid them. You find them and you put them. So I adjudicated quite a lot of things on the street because I never liked going to the courthouses. Not to say that I would allow wrongs to go unpunished or unattended. No. I would sometimes give away these things to other men who wanted to make overtime. I prefer to be in the street talking to people, wearing my ankh over my handcuff case and talking to people about life, okay, and about our need to embrace a life philosophy. Because right now, even today, we are worshiping death, all right? And so I continued to study, and eventually someone brought me, while I was pounding the beat, someone brought me a tape of Dr. Ben. And I said, wow, he sounds just like my father. And I adopted him as my spiritual father. And in 1980, January 13th, 1980, at the Church of the Master in Harlem, where Dr. Eugene Callender was presiding, I was assisted by Sister Badia, who is today known as Serkat, because she took a Kemetic name. And she assisted me in getting that venue, the Church of the Master in Harlem, to give Dr. Ben one of these ankhs, a sign of life, because his teachings brought life to our people. And later on in 1982, I gave Dr. John Hendrik Clark, one of the world's foremost historians, um, his ankh. In 1981, I gave presented an ankh to Alma Numsa John. She was one of the first registered nurses at Harlem Hospital in Harlem, New York. She received an ankh. And even Sun Ra, the musician, because he was very much into ancient Kemet, now known as Egypt today, and he wrote his album Space is the Place, because he knew that our ancestors were very much into the cosmic procession. Okay, guess what? We used to build temples, and our mathematics and our geometry was so precise that the Sesheta priestesses would have a ceremony called the drawing of the cord, where they would find where they were going to create a temple. And by drawing the cord, they would align the holies of holies in the back of the temple directly to a specific star to which that temple was livicated. I don't say dedicated, okay? I'm into life. So the Rasta man has taught me to say livicated, not dedicated. And I would show that this precision, look at how we are so afraid of mathematics, how we're so afraid of geometry and algebra when we're the originators of all these sciences, okay? But if we were only taught that this is our true culture, we would have been surpassing these folks long ago who think that we are ignorant. They try to make us ignorant, but in our subconscious, we have a memory of something far greater than we are now displaying. And that's the reason why we must begin to read and study. And I'll never forget, I was walking in Coney Island one day in front of Nathan's Hot Dog, and during my lunch hour, I took some time to walk up on Surf Avenue. And I came upon a used bookstore. And in that bookstore, I found every single book that I needed to own this culture and to own this legacy. There were the 3 volumes by Gerald Massey. Actually, there were 7 volumes. 2 volumes of the Book of Beginnings, 2 volumes of the Natural Genesis, and finally 2 volumes of Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, and then a book of lectures. And I immersed myself. And guess what? Gerald Massey was not looked upon too kindly by the Egyptologists because he was telling some truth about these ancient people. Wallace Budge, another prolific Englishman, who was the late keeper of the Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities in the British Museum. He took his time to interpret the papyrus of Anui, which of course he went to call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead, knowing that a life's people would not want to go into a book that is given a title such as the Book of the Dead. Okay. However, when you open the pages of that book and you read the exalted thought patterns of these ancient Nile Valley ancestors, I'm telling you, it will, and you will discover in that book, you'll discover the 42 oracles of Ma'at, the 42 admonitions of Ma'at. I have not murdered, I have not killed, I have not stolen, I have not desecrated holy places. It goes on for 42, I have not. So when I began to teach Comedics 101, I would tell the initiates, I said, in the morning, you say, I will not do so and so. You declare before the altar of Ma'at, which has a feather on it, because Ma'at encourages you to keep your heart as light as a feather. And when you do things that are worthy, things that are good, your heart will remain light. When you do things that are wrong, when you do things that are against your people, when you do things against the society, then you have a heavy heart. So you were challenged to maintain balance and order with your heart, because this is what the ancients processed their thoughts through, the heart, not just the brain, you see? All right? And so these are some of the things, and that is how I began then, as I gathered more knowledge of this culture, I began to teach. First of all, I was teaching on the street corner in uniform. And that's one of the ways in which I would clear the corner, because brothers shooting dice, we don't want to hear that. I said, well, if you don't want to hear it, you have to move off my post, okay? And so, all right. They nod their head and they would walk away and come back and listen to my diatribes of ancient African spirituality and culture. And I got in trouble for doing that, because um, that was not in keeping with the desire of people who wanted numbers in terms of arrests and summonses. I never quite filled my quota, because I found it to be sad that the people who maintain the economy of this nation, who buys these cars, have nowhere to put them. They may be working hard. They wake up in the morning too late to move the car to the other side of the street, and they get a summons for $50, $25, $30. I thought it was so unfair to the people who maintain the economy of this nation. And so I never quite met my quotas, and I got in trouble for that too. But I persevered, and after 20 years, I retired. Been retired now for about 35 years. And it was quite an experience. And in there, I met some decent human beings in that blue uniform. Don't you believe the lies that all the cops that you see are wicked? No, they are not. They are quite a few honest ones. I met quite a few of them, but I also met some scoundrels, and I also met some gangsters in blue, okay? And there are still some today who overstep their bounds and overstep their duty, okay? But I would tell you, be careful how you deal with police officers. You know why? Because unless we clean up our own community, which is our responsibility, we're going to have to continue to depend upon them to maintain the peace among us. Isn't that something sick? Something has to be done about that, and that's the reason why I'm saying to my Christian brothers, my Christian ministers, I'm saying to my Muslim ministers, to my Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, I'm saying to you, all of you, reacquaint yourselves with the spiritual culture of Ma'at. It would not disturb your religion. It could not, because your prophets went into Kemet and they learned about this culture. Where do you think the Ten Commandments came from? Huh? Where do you think a moral code came from? From these African ancestors who left it carved in stone. And in the Book of the Coming Forth, the Papyrus of Anumi, called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. If you get a copy, I like to show this, because this book here, it's very easy. Can you see it? There you go. You get a copy of this book, and inside of it you will find there is a line of the hieroglyphics, the Metu Neter. By the way, the language that these ancestors spoke, they call Metu Neter, or Metu Netcher. Metu means words. Netcher is the ancient name, one of the oldest names for the divine, the one that you call God in the German language, or Gott, okay? And if they call their language the very words of the divine, Metu Netcher, And nature is spelled with an N, a T, and an R, which just happens to be the very root, the consonants of the word nature. And that is why our ancestors used animals, we used birds, we used insects to describe human process. We would say today with the analogy, oh, he's as strong as a bull, or he's as brave as a lion. You see, these analogies are how we saw divine expressing itself. It was not a worship of many gods and goddesses. That's nonsense. Those are lies told to slander your ancestors, your African ancestors, as polytheists. They believed in many gods. Well, guess what? The people who claim to believe in one God are murderers and slave mongers and have brought you over here in chains, murdered you and lynched you and burned fires under your, burning embers under your feet. Okay, and they did this on Sunday after they left church. Okay, think about that. That's the reason why we must reclaim Ma'at, because all those major prophets, including Jacob, who said to his sons, "Do not be afraid," and you will find this in your Bible. I don't remember the exact chapter and verse, but it said that Jacob told his sons, "When you go into Egypt, do not be afraid to go down there, because out of there I will make of you a great nation." And Jacob took the name Israel. All right? But Israel is the name of a man. Oh, yes. And so when those shepherds went in, at one time, the farmers and gardeners of the Nile, because the Nile River made of the northern section the breadbasket of the then known world. It was a very fertile soil. Every year it would have its inundation. The Nile River would flow and overflow its banks. And 75% of the waters of the inundation came out of the land of Cush, now misnamed Ethiopia in the Greek vernacular and Abyssinia in the Roman vernacular. So 75% of the water coming from Cush, Ethiopia as they call it, and in the water is a silt, a black substance, a black soil, a dark, dark soil, which was very fertile. And that's what fed the people. The people of this land were farmers and gardeners, and they abhorred the behavior of the shepherds, who were known to cohabit with their sheep, because they said the sheep's vagina was like a woman's, okay? So at one time, and Jacob told his sons, "Do not tell the Egyptians that you are shepherds, because shepherds are an abomination unto the Egyptians." Why? Because they indulge in practices that were not healthy. And that was the beginning of the disease we call syphilis. Therefore, look at us. We are being led into the pasture of the pastor. And I'm not beating up on my pastor brothers, because they are going to go through a transformation. They must, because their members and their parishioners are discovering about this legacy. There have been a lot of elders who've been banging about ancient Egypt for a long time. And finally, you go on the internet and you will see that a lot of young people are now claiming this Ankh. I made one for Erica Badu. I made one for Wesley Snipes. I made Ankhs for so many people. Susan Taylor from Essence Magazine has an Ankh that I made for her. Okay. Judge Bruce Wright, we call him Cut 'em Loose Bruce. He received an Ankh from my hands. Sonny Babaduka Carson, known as Sonny Carson, he also received an Ankh. Okay. Adelaide Sanford, who was one of the first regents in upstate New York, in Albany, New York, she likewise received an Ankh. Chashi McIntyre, a great scholar, received an Ankh from my hand. Gary Bird, who used to be on WLIB, radio station, he also received it. So I can go on and on and on. For 10 years, I was making Ankhs for an elder woman and an elder man who had contributed to the upliftment of people of African ascent at the African Arts Festival, which took place every year at the Boys and Girls High Field in Brooklyn. Okay? And so I continue to do this work and to acquaint people with this sacred and most beautiful culture. And I encourage you, I encourage all who hear what I'm saying, to go on the internet. It's a divine net. Oh, yes. I want to thank my northern cousins, the Tamahu. They call themselves white people, and I invite them likewise to join with us in investigating the truth of what I'm speaking about, because we need many allies in the reclamation of culture. Okay? And you are invited to come into the house, providing you wipe your feet at the door and claim my art. Righteousness, balance, order, truth, reciprocity, sobriety, and propriety. If you will put that crown of that kind of Ma'atian behavior on your head, you are welcome. But if you insist on being an outlaw, if you insist on peddling lies and distortions of truth, then you are not welcome. I'm sorry. Okay? Get a book and hide it from your neighbors, because if they see you reading, they may persecute you. Even in our community nowadays, young men who want to enliven their intellectual capacity are teased by others. Oh, you're talking white. If you use a polysyllable, oh, you're talking white. When I came to America, I had to deal with a lot of that. But when I lapsed into my island talk, they said, oh, you're a coconut, huh? So between talking white and being a coconut, they kept me away. They kept me at a distance. But in time, I persevered, and I ended up teaching many of our brothers and sisters about this ancient culture. And I continue to do that to this day. And that is how you discovered some of what I'm teaching. And that's why I'm here, sharing this knowledge with our brothers and sisters.
Awesome. If you could talk a little bit more about Shem, Cam, and Japhet.
Okay. Now, you remember, well, I don't know if you went to Sunday school, but for those of my Christian brothers and sisters who have gone to Sunday school, they are acquainted with Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those are the sons of Noah. You remember in reading the Bible how Noah, the Most High, God, Yahweh, Jehovah, decided to murder a batch of people that he created who were wicked. So he went against his own law, do not kill, and he drowned them in a flood. But before he did that, he looked for one just man who was called Noah. And he said, Noah, I want you to build an ark, which is a boat. And I want you to take your 3 sons and their wives into this ark. And Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives were in the ark for 40 days and 40 nights. 40 and 40 adds up to an 80. I want you to bear in mind that 8, okay? By the way, this emblem of the omnipotence of God, this emblem that comes out of Ghana, it shows there are 8 circles on this symbol, all right? And you notice it has like spirals, all right? When the sperm hits the egg, it splits it into 2, then 4, then 8. Microcosmically, the ark is floating on the waters of our mother's womb. That's why when you come into the earth, they say the water breaks, right? There goes that 8 again. In the cosmology of Ptah, it says that in the first time, they never said in the beginning, they say in the first times, there was the Nun, the primordial waters. I'm going to get back to Ham and Japheth in a minute, but I want to give you this too. And in the Nun, there were 4 pairs of Neteru, or 4 pairs of divine expressions. Ho and Hohet, Cook and Coquette, Amen and Amenet, Nun and Nunet. Okay. Where do you think the word Noah came from? Nu, to our ancestors, was known as the guardian of the primordial waters of space. and the primordial waters of the ocean. That is who Nu is. And the name is spelt with 3 waves of water, one on top of the other. Okay? So when our Shemitic cousins created their cosmology of creation, they used instead a man and his sons and their 4 wives to create that balance of 8. But before they did that, your ancestors of the Nile Valley had already established how creation got started out of the waters of the Nun, the primordial ocean. And these 4 pairs of Neteru, of divine forces that were in the water, and at the call of Tehuti, the divine keeper of the word, they came out of the water and walked on dry land as Ta Tenen, the risen land. And there they began to populate the earth. So you see, this is our creation story. But now let's get back to the one we call Ham. It says that after Noah came out of the ark, that he planted a vineyard. Yep. He mashed up some grapes, and it got fermented, and he became the first drunken sea captain. Okay, in your Bible. All right. And he fell asleep, and they say he was naked and uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan. Canaan? Where did Canaan come from? He was not even born yet. Remember, this is Noah just coming on dry land, planting a vineyard, waiting for them to grow, and then mashing them to create a wine that made him drunk. And they said he was uncovered in his tent, that he was naked. And Ham said to his brothers, Shem and Japheth, hey, Daddy's in there, he's naked, he's drunk, and he's naked. Now, this could have nothing to do with not having any clothes on, because we were not ashamed of the naked body. Early people were into their bodies. They were not ashamed to walk around naked in a creative place where the sun came to play. No, they were not afraid to do that. So you know that this nakedness is an allegorical explanation. To me, nakedness is revelation. Revelation. That Ham saw the nakedness of his father, and he told Shem and Japheth, who were outside the door, and he said, hey, come in here, Daddy's naked. And they say, no, we don't want to look. But Ham saw both the faults and the attributes of his father. He got all his father's wisdom. The other 2 made themselves voluntarily blind. And look, today we depend on them for our instructions in things sacred and divine. And the one who saw this wisdom and who wrote his wisdom in stone and papyrus up and down the Nile, words so precious that they've been kidnapped and put into the museums of the Western world all over this earth. Sometimes I have to pause, because it's a lot to swallow. It's a lot to try to remember. But if you take this, you can go back and run it over again until you get it. Okay? So now, how come that the one who saw the revelation of his father's faults and his father's truth and got all his father's wisdom is now depending upon the 2 who did not see anything for knowledge? There's something crazy about that. Because your Old Testament is Shem's book. Your New Testament is Japheth's book. You go to any seminary school, and they will teach you that Ham is the African. He's what they call the black man. I don't like that word, but that's what they call us. It's a label. It has no meaning in reality. Okay? We need to find a word in our own ancient language, to articulate what we look like. Okay? But that doesn't tell the whole story of who we are. Okay? But anyway, Noah had these 3 sons and their wives, and they went into the ark. And when Noah came out of the ark and got drunk, and he said, and Ham saw his nakedness. Ham saw the revelation of his father's truth and knowledge. The father woke from his wine. Cursed be Canaan! A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. Cursed be Canaan? Why are you cursing your unborn grandson, Noah? Huh? Anyway, it so happened that we find out, if you find the genealogy, that Ham had 4 sons. One is called Mizraim, which is a Hebrew name for the place now miscalled Egypt in the Greek vernacular. Cush, which is the proper name for the land now called Ethiopia in Greek and Abyssinia in Rome. Put or Ptah, that's around Kenya, Somalia, Uganda region, Central Equatorial Africa. The bibliolators like to say that no, that Put is Libya. They don't like anything to go too deep into Africa, you see. As long as they can play to the northern region, they can play their stupid color games, you know. And so there we find that and Canaan is another son of Ham. Canaan, the place now known as Palestine or Israel, was known as the land of Canaan. All right. So these, at one time, don't be fooled by the Suez Canal that seems that it wants to cut it off from the African continent. Okay, that's another trick. All right. One day I'll tell you the story of how that dam was built. All right. Anyway, Ham, or Chem, which is the proper name, because of all the wisdom that he got from his father Noah, or from, in his language, from Nu, the guardian of the primordial waters of space. And guess where the primordial waters can be found in miniature? On your tongue. Because without the water in your mouth, you cannot even articulate speech. All right? So now that we find that Mizraim is Kemet or Egypt, we find that Cush is Ethiopia, we find that Canaan is the land now called Israel or Palestine, and that Put is Central Equatorial Africa, we can now go home. But when we go home, we should ask, well, where is the wisdom that our ancestors left for us? What did Ham do with this knowledge? He wrote it in stone. And he called the land Kemet, which means the black land. Okay? And because of the waters, the black silt in the waters that came out of the land of Cush, when the river inundated every year, it would have its yearly menstruation, the Nile Valley. And the White Nile down in Central Equatorial Africa would meet the Blue Nile coming out of Lake Tana in the land of Cush, Ethiopia. And together at Khartoum, these two rivers would join together and flow down to the delta, which made it the breadbasket of the then known world. At one time, the land of Kemet was not even there. It was built up from the silk that came out of Ethiopia and out of Nubia. So that's why the Rastaman say that Egypt is the daughter of Cush, because it was the Cushite soil that filled up that land down in the delta there and made it such a very fertile place for growing the food of the farmers of the Nile. Okay, that's what we came from. We came from a farmer, gardener culture. Let me go back a little bit and remember the Cain and Abel story. That when Cain brought his offering, he brought pulse, or vegetables, vegetation. What did Abel bring as his offering? He brought the fat of a ram. In other words, he had to kill a male sheep in order to take the fat out of it. And then he roasted it on the fire. And the Lord loved the smell of the burning flesh. He said it was agreeable to his spirit. Read it in your book if you read. I would invite you to read and make sense out of what you're reading, okay? And so Sometimes I have to pause because this is so simple. And you think that our pastors would have seen this long time ago, but many of them have seen it, but they keep silent about it. Do you know that Martin Luther King wrote about this in a thesis? You go online and you will find that Malcolm X wrote about who he called Isis, Osiris, and Horus, the sacred trinity of your African ancestors, who is now called Isis, Osiris, and Horus. In our legacy, they're known as Ust or Set, Asar for the male, and Heru for the young child. Okay? So Heru would equate to what we now know as Jesus. Or Set, the divine virgin, the first of the virgin mothers, she would be what you now know as Mary. Asar would be the one that you know as Joseph. But you see, that's the shepherd's cosmology. You need the farmer gardener cosmology. And you also need to consume the farmer gardener's diet. It don't mean you don't eat some flesh. We used to hunt geese around the Nile River, and we used to use a lot of ground food, a lot of lentils, and that kind of those kind of green foods. All right, and so that's what we need to go back to because our obesity is killing us. Okay, so when that bacteria is looking for a home, it finds a home in the pollution of obese people. And that don't mean that you should condemn people who have problems with their weight. Don't be beating up on people who have excess weight. Encourage them to eat more fruit, to eat more green, to come back to balance. Because our ravenousness and all these substances we are putting in our body is taking us out of here. Okay? So that is a bit of the story of Noah. So I invite you, brothers and sisters, to begin to reclaim this ancient Nile Valley culture. You can go on the internet and you'll see Dr. Ben speaking about it, John Henry Clark, so many others are speaking about it. And you can go to the Temple of Anu in New Jersey and look it up. Every other Sunday, they teach about this culture. You can go to the Shrine of Ma'at in Harlem, and likewise there, with Anika and Jabari Osaze. Okay, they're likewise teachers of this divine legacy. They were my students years ago. They've been married now for about 21 years, and they're teaching about this ancient culture. So I invite you all to go and to investigate this knowledge and to apply Ma'at in your life. Lose the extra pounds. And my brothers, to you especially, I invite you because you see, your excess weight, that pot belly, it's nothing for this. It's not nothing funny about that pot belly. There are poisons inside there. And when you deposit that poison into your wife's or your mate's shetette, you are poisoning her and you are getting her to begin to have fibroid tumors because of the over-acidity of your sperm. Your sperm is supposed to be alkaline. I speak on this every time I get a chance, okay? We must learn how to hold our seed. A lot of us are letting go our seed irresponsibly, impregnating women who are not ready to have any babies, and then they have the choice of having to go and get an abortion. Meanwhile, you are aborting millions of sperm into napkins and into rubbers, huh? Okay? Wasting your very essence. This is a life energy that you should hold within yourself and circulate. Maybe circulate in your bloodstream to ennoble your bloodstream, okay? Because it's a living energy. I know you like to come and go to sleep, but guess what? When you come, you are really going, all right? So you hold on to your seed and be kind to our women. And again, stay out of her back door. I know she's twerking and inviting you to deal with her backside. But a true man wants to deal with the front side. I'm being frank and what I would call, I cannot be more plain. I can't make it any plainer than I am right now. Okay? I didn't come on here to play with you. I came in here to shed some wisdom. That's what elders are supposed to do. And so I hope that you have listened to what I've shared. Any other questions, my brother?
Yes, sir. Could you talk about Hesi and Heka?
Heka is what the Europeans, or I should say the Egyptologists refer to as magic. But magic is a pejorative term. It sort of defames the practice, the spiritual practice of our ancestors when they would do Hesi. Hesi means to praise, to chant, okay? And when you chant, especially when you chant words of power, it ennobles your bloodstream, all right? It gives you energy. And I invite many of our brothers and sisters to learn how to roll your R, because that will give you magnificent energy. It causes you to flex your solar plexus muscles and send heat throughout your body. So you must chant words of power. Now there's a chant, there's a Hesi that you can do to invite yourself to life, prosperity, and health. Unk, ucha, sineb. Unk, ucha, sineb. Now if you want to Hesi that or chant it, ucha, ucha, sene, bong, ucha, sene, bong, ucha, sene, Onku Jasine, Onku Jasine, Onk, Onku Jasine, Onk, Onku Jasine, Onk, Onku Jasine, Onk, Ucha, Sineb, life, prosperity, and health. And when you chant that, see your life in front of you, see yourself growing in wisdom and knowledge. You're invoking the life force itself when you say okay? The word unk lives on in that piece of iron that men in storms put down in the ocean. It's called an anchor. There's the word unk again. You put your life savings in a bank, bank, okay? You see how words and sounds came down to us from our ancient legacy, from the Metu Neter, the words of the divine, which they call hieroglyphics. By the way, the word hieroglyphics, herio, means sacred. Glyphiko in Greek means writing. So even your ancient ancestors referred to their writing as the words of the divine. Notice I didn't say the words of God because I don't like to use the G word. It chokes my throat. I prefer to say or nature, okay, which are the consonants of the word nature, once again. You worshiping nature, my brother? No, we use nature as analogous. It's nature forms is what we use, and why they say that we are worshiping many gods, that we are polytheists. You know, as I said before, monotheists are the ones who enslaved your ancestors. But some of them will also work to free your ancestors. Never forget that. And those of you who want to beat up on the European and the Caucasian, remember that many of them were your allies during the civil rights movement. I'll never forget Goodman, Schorner, and Cheney three young men. Cheney, he was a brother, and Goodman and Schwerner, they were Jewish, and they were murdered in Mississippi. Okay, Reverend James Reed, who was a preacher, a European, what they call a Caucasian, what they call a white man. He likewise, his life was taken from him. Okay, Viola Liuzzo, a beautiful Italian woman, went down to walk with Martin Luther King. She likewise was taken out and damaged. Okay, so be very careful that you do not turn off some of your allies, because not all of them are wicked, but enough of them are to create hell for you, to use that N word, which many of you now embrace as a term of endearment. Since you like N words so well, I invite you to say Negus, which means king. Negus, Negusti, king of kings. Okay, that is in the Amharic, that is a Ethiopian word. Negus. Okay. Neter is another word with an N in it, which means the divine, that you can invoke. You think if you call each other Negus, that you would be so quick to kill each other? Huh? No, I don't think so. How are you going to kill a king? First of all, you got to deal with the fact that that king came out of the womb of a queen mother. Every time you kill one of your brothers, you are insulting his mother. Have respect for the mother who labored for 10 moons to bring life into the world. You cannot get away with that. You will meet your karma. You will meet Shai. You will meet the Amemit. She's the one who consumes the heart of the unjustified ones, the ones who work against the principles of my art. Okay? See, I'm dropping some knowledge on you, my brothers and sisters, and I hope you write some of these things down and play it over and over and ask questions about it. Go into Google. Some of this stuff is there on Google. It's very simple now to access some of this knowledge, but you better get some books. Okay, get the book by Tony Browder, African Origins of Civilization. No, that's by Sheikh Anta Diop, Myth or Reality. Tony Browder's books, like his book called Egypt and the Potomac. Do you know that was the name of Washington, D.C. before that was called Columbia? Huh? Did you know that? Okay. So the founding fathers of this nation were into masonry. They were speculative masons. They were not really actual masons, but they laid the foundation of America with Masonic principles, with the principles of a builder. That's the reason why you see the G inside of the compass. That G is for geometry. And some say that G is for God. But you cannot put God before you and do the work of the devil by discriminating against people because they have a robe of the sun that you call black skin. Think about it. So, anything else, my brother?
Yes, sir. I just have a few more. Could you talk a little bit about the age of happy?
That is what we call Aquarius. Aquarius, the water bearer, happens to be an air age. And that's the reason why the airwaves are so important. That's the reason why the internet is a divine instrument by which we can get knowledge out here to the people. I remember sometimes I would have to get on an airplane. Somebody would invite me to give a lecture. I would show up at the lecture hall. Sometimes there are 10, 15 people in there. After the people who invited me publicized it, got on radio, got on TV, got on the radio, Baaba Heru was coming to town. I would show up, and it's 15, 20 people in the hall. All right. Now, because of internet, I'm able to reach thousands. I was on Brother Rich's channel the other day, Black Magic 363, and I think there were about 56,000 people heard my what I call my diatribe, my comedic diatribe. Okay, my talk on the legacy. All right, and many of them seem to have appreciated it. And you can go in there and you can find so many of our scholars teaching some of this knowledge. Listen to it. If you're going to put that thing on, just don't deal with the the twerking and all this kind of stuff all the time, please look for substantive interviews, okay? Not only from black folks, because there are quite a few people, and not only from you know whom, there are many people who are teaching the truth today. And when it comes to ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, I like to read the women's writings, all right? Um, and because they seem to be more honest, they don't try to hide as much as their male counterparts. Rosemary Clark, get that name. Her name is Rosemary Clark. She has 2 volumes that are beyond words in terms of the knowledge that she's sharing about the Nile Valley African culture. All right? Get the book by Count Volney, who was one of Napoleon's generals. He wrote the book called The Ruins of Empires. That's a very important book. Another book that you ought to get is Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man. Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man by Albert Churchward. And then if you want to go deeper, you can get Sacred Science by R.A. Shvala de Lubicz. D, capital D-E, capital Lubicz. De Lubicz. And he has a 2-volume set called the, oh my gosh, don't tell me the title of his book. It's 2 volumes. You go on the internet and you look R.A. Shvala de Lubicz, and you would see he's got a 2-volume set. The name is
You're talking about the Egyptian miracle and the sacred science.
Yes, Sacred Science is a very important book, because in that book he encapsulates so much of the truth. Unfortunately, we found out that he was an apologist for that demon called Adolf Hitler. And so, however, he camped out in the temple of Ipet Aysut, known as Luxor, for 15 years. And he said that the walls of the temple spoke to him. And what he came out with from his sojourn in the temple for 15 years blew the minds of the Egyptologists, who are in denial of what he was teaching. So you get Sacred Science. And also, I remember The Temple in Man, 2 volumes. They're big books. They're in blue and white. 2 volumes of The Temple in Man by R.A. Shvala de Lubicz. Also get Anthony West's book, The Serpent in the Sky. Anthony West, he came to visit me once, and I said, Anthony, at the time there was a little war going on in Brooklyn between people of African descent and the Jewish people because of some young man who was killed, and we had to. There was a lot of division in the community of Crown Heights, and which was on the border of what they call Bedford-Stuyvesant, and it got really weird there. So I said to John Anthony West, I said, "You are a Jewish gentleman. Can you help me to reduce the level of vitriol that's going on between the children of Shem and the children of Chem, who you call Ham, by teaching the truth of the legacy of Ma'at?" He let me know, well, that's not my duty. I'm an author. I said, but you know the truth, so why don't you share it with the world? Tell them the truth. And many of these Egyptologists know the truth, but they are stuck on 3100 BC as the beginning of the Old Kingdom. Nonsense. There's watermarks around the Heru Em Aket, known as the Hu Nebhu. The name means Lord of authoritative utterance, because that animal body with a human head on it, which they call the Sphinx in Greek, that conceals a message for those of us who are ready to assume the responsibility to come into my heart, to come into righteousness, balance, order, and truth. All right? And so there's so much there. And many of our brothers and sisters, and go to Philip Shop Matthews and check out his platform. Okay? And I need to say this one thing before I go. I know many of you are, I think I may have said this before, but many of you are into Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. But I want to tell you that Kemet is right there in your face. You can get on a plane and go and visit and be transformed by what you will see in those temples, up and down the Nile, with sacred writing put there by your and my African ancestors. I say African, not African, because Frik is a Arabic word which means to separate or to divide. I say Af, which means the flesh. Ra is the hidden sun, and Ka is the double or your soul. So you are made of the flesh and the soul of the hidden sun. Not the sun that you see in the sky, that's the Aten Ra. The hidden sun is the Amen Ra. Notice that word Amen. You were told it means so be it, like it's an agreement that what I've just said is law, is truth. But no, your ancestors invoked that sounds Amen thousands of years before it was copied by the shepherds and put into their book with the definition, so be it. No, it means the hidden one. And we even wrote a hymn about it that I used to sing in church. God moves in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Yes, in mysterious ways, in the ways of Amen. Plants his footsteps on the sea and rides upon the storm. But you cannot see Amen riding the storm. But you can feel Amen riding the storm. Look at what's happening up in California. And I'm saying a warning to our beloved brothers and sisters in this nation, this beautiful nation called the United States of America. So much of what you're experiencing as bad weather is nothing but some of your bad attitudes coming back to haunt you. And unfortunately, the innocent is suffering with the guilty. You remember what happened at the Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama during the Civil Rights Movement? Where John Lewis was beaten within an inch of his life? Huh? Well, he went home to the ancestors and he told them, I know you were watching, ancestors, what happened to me on that bridge. When are you going to deal with it? Well, Sekhmet, the one who purges evil, she has the face of a lioness. And unfortunately, so many of the innocent people are suffering with the storms and the floods that is taking place, not only in California, not only in Selma, Alabama, but all over this nation and all over the world. Humanity is off track. And so they're getting an ass whipping, which they well deserve. My only sadness is to see innocent people who don't know what has hit them and why. You are reaping exactly what you sow. You sow lies, and when your heart comes to be weighed against a feather by the Netert Ma'at, she will let you know that you have been wrong, and therefore you are tasting some of the wrong that you visited upon innocent people. And so now many are homeless. And I do not rejoice in this. No, I do not rejoice. I'm not happy to see anyone lose their home. But I know the law of karma is in effect, full effect. And so I want to know why my evangelical brothers and sisters are so silent. Tell your flock to change their wicked ways. Tell them to stop promoting lies because you ain't seen nothing yet. These storms are the sum total of the attitudes that are gathering up in the Akasha, and it's coming back to deal with you. Oh, yes. You cannot escape the wrongs that you've done to the world, the wrongs you've done to the Aboriginal people of this earth. Remember, the Khamsin wind comes from the Sahara every year and blankets the Atlantic with a fine dust. Don't think that the ancestors who are under those waves, that their bones are shifting still. Don't think that their prayers have not been heard. I know it seems like, well, it seems late, but it's never too late in things divine to balance the scales of my art. My art will balance her scales. And now I'm not talking about that blindfolded lady down at the courthouse who pretend not to see who's filling up her jails, okay? I'm not talking about that one. I'm speaking about the one that was replaced by Lady Just Ice. Justice? No, look at the two words is made of just and ice. Cold, wicked, evil. We have the power to have to transform some of this behavior. When we put our bodies up against those cattle prods and those water hoses and those dogs throughout the South, when our children were bitten, when women had their breasts torn by German shepherds, do you think that these folks were going to get away with it? Look at them now. Look at them with their attitudes, worshiping liars and lies. Okay? Look at what's happening. And do not gloat. Just observe in silence the workings of the laws of my art. Look and behold the workings of Sekhmet. She is the angel with the face of a lioness, and she is most ferocious, and she comes to balance the scales of my art. I know there's some folks who are listening to this who don't believe it, but you see, you have not read what's on the walls. You've got our papyri in all your museums, and you don't want to read that because you know it's telling you about your wickedness. But the wickedness is not only among certain people who we refer to as white people. There are many so-called black people who are just as wicked as their former masters. All right, and they're filling up the jails. But some of them are innocent. Some of them are doing long time because of a nickel bag of ganja that they use to pacify their minds from the stress that they suffer in a culture that don't like them. And so,
All right, Baba. I got one more question and then we could close.
yes, sir.
Could you talk a little bit about stargazing?
Yes. Unfortunately, city lights block off our access to stargazing. But until you can get on a mountain where you can actually see the stars at night, where you can ride on the fields of the stars, oh yes, you would have dreams like you never had in your life. I was on the other day and they kept asking me, brother, how do we access these fields? And I told them you have to do a little bit of reading. Get into pyramid text, which we call the Rayu Merkutu, the pyramid texts. And in there you will see the king Unas journeying to his star. That's nothing but code word for meditation. Okay? You will see Pepi the First, of whom it said on one of the first lines of the Merkutu, of the Sesh Merkutu, the pyramid text. It says of the king Pepi the First, "This is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased." Those words were plagiarized and put in the Bible when Yeshua, his true Aramaic name, Hebrew name, was being baptized by John the Baptist. A voice came out of heaven saying, "This of Yeshua, this is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased." But those words were uttered thousands of years before in behalf of the king Unas, or I think it was Pepi the First. All right? So what I'm saying, there's been a lot of plagiarisms of your sacred wisdom, my brothers and sisters. What you're getting now is cornmeal pap. It hardly has any substance. You need to understand why your ancestors took the trouble to put their words so deep in stone so it would last throughout the ages. They would make their artful books of sesh, which we call papyrus, so beautiful that you were compelled to try to figure out what are they saying. It's like a comic book. If you cannot read the text, just look at the pictures, because the pictures alone tells a story. Oh yes. So I want to thank you, my beloved brother, for inviting me to share some of what I've shared tonight. I hope that I have not offended anyone, but I know sometimes the truth has a way of offending people, but it's not my intention to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm a healer. I've come to bring truth that I've discovered in books written by people who said that they are our enemies, and they call them Egyptologists. Okay? So if you want to fight with me, go buy their books and fight with them. Okay? Because I got a lot of what I got and shared with you from their book, but I got so much from the Bible, the King James especially, because do not be fooled. Don't throw that book away. It's filled with African wisdom that's been plagiarized and put in there with pretenders that they wrote it, that God wrote it. How come that God does not know the true name for the land now miscalled Egypt? All right. So, once again, I want to thank you, my brother, for inviting me, and I hope that what I've shared will impact upon some of our beloved brothers and sisters in all humanity. You look this up. You can Google some of what I've said and find it to be true. If you want to Google, go buy the books that I've recommended, and you will find a lot. Meditate and contemplate what you are reading. Just don't read like you're reading something unimportant. Take your time and digest and contemplate what you're reading, and that contemplation will lead you into meditation. You will enter into fields of divine discovery if you will quiet your mind. Do your deep breathing in and out. In and out. As you breathe like that, and you go to sleep, just before you go to sleep at nights, there is a window where eternity will speak to you. But you have to balance your state of sleep and wakefulness. And you will have such fantastic dreams. You've got to practice. Another thing, people want me to tell them how it's done. No, you got to discover this on your own. I'm giving you hints, okay? Because some will take this knowledge and use it profanely to hurt people. I'm an Ankh man. I'm here to give life and to teach life, to praise life, because life and the divine is one. Pata sekamat aim hatapata sekamat nefaratum 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 pata sekamat aim hatapata sekamat nefaratum. Ptah lays the foundation. Sekhmet, she brings the healing, the purging way of healing. And Neferatum, he brings the divine perfume of aromas of flowers and incense. Hetepu, beloved brothers and sisters. I know I close my eyes sometimes when I speak because I go within. Hetepu.
Awesome. Thank you, Baba, for joining me. For those looking to connect with you, where can people find you?
You can email me at Hars, Hars, Joyari, Joyari, at gmail.com. Hars Joyari, Joyari, at gmail.com. All right. And you can look at some of my rants on YouTube. You Google Baaba Heru, Baaba Heru. In Facebook, Baaba Heru _ no, Baaba Heru Speaks on Facebook. And on Instagram, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm a master craftsman. I have created the world's most extensive designs of sacred joyary, wedding bands, engagement rings. Imagine your engagement ring, your stone, your birthstone or your diamond or whatever you want to use, being held up by 4 miniature unks. Not those little devil prongs that people use to grab the diamonds out of Africa. Little unks. And sometimes I even use the miniature feathers of my aunt, the feather of truth, okay, which you will see back here behind my bracelets. Okay, you'll see the feathers of my aunt there. Okay, I'm wearing the Eye of Heru bracelet. Okay, you see, with the Eye of Heru, so I can remember to be attentive to my life and attentive to things around me. Okay, those are the eyes of Heru. To and to give thanks.
Awesome. Well, that concludes this episode of The Inner. Again, Baba, thank you for joining me. Well, that'll be it for this session.
I forgot to give you 212-343-9706. 212-343-9706. If you dial that number, sometimes I answer the phone. People always say, "Oh, is Baaba Heru answering?" Please, I'm here to serve. The best time to reach me if you have a question is after 7. Okay? And I'll be able to give you some of my time. I like to not only share the designs of the joyery that I create, I like to share the knowledge behind it. So you'll be aware of what you're wearing and be able to teach. Each one teach one, each one reach one. That's what Sister Numsa Alma Numsa John used to say. Okay? So I forgot to mention that. So I just want people to be able to reach me if they want me. And if you're going to get married, and brothers, I do man engagement rings too. You give your queen an engagement ring and then you walk around as if you're not spoken for. Well, I got a man engagement ring that she can put on your finger too, okay? Yeah,
Awesome. Well, that concludes this session. You all be blessed. Thank you.